As I think many of you know, is the sustainability coordinator for the city of Oberlin and a frequent collaborator on things sometimes that relate to this class. Josh Jensen is our director of communications at Oberlin College, probably vice president of communications, because that's what we do now. That's the way we call these things. And it's really nice to have Josh here. He's obviously a communications expert. That's what he does for his living. So great to have him here with us. And then Heather Adelman, who you have met before because she participated in our first round. And as you know, she's the sustainability coordinator for the city of Oberlin. I have said to these guys, what's it for the college? She used to be on the city council, president of the city council, no less. But now she works for Oberlin College, and some of you work for her. So these folks have graciously come in today, knowing that this is your first public presentation, and so that some students in this class are feeling a little bit nervous. This is their first time making a public presentation, and I assured my class that you guys would be kind to them. And you have two major roles in today's class. One is to sort of think deeply about the projects that they will be discussing today. But two is also to think about giving them feedback, kind feedback on the presentations that they give us today. This is the first of 3 public presentations that they'll give. They will be speaking at Good Morning Oberlin shortly after we return from fall break, giving a presentation to that group, which has always been a fun presentation. And then at the end of the semester, they're going to be talking to Kendall, a group at Kendall at Oberlin, doing their final presentation there. So one of the focuses of this class is on all different forms of communication, written communication, oral communication, other kinds of communication. But then what they do over the course of the semester is to engage in significant projects that advance environmental communication with some projects we have within the city of Oberlin, and then also some projects we have in Cleveland. So each of these students is involved in a group, one of 5 groups that is focusing on things. In a broad sense, this year's theme of the class is enhancing Eco-Olympics engagement within Oberlin, using green infrastructure for education, and promoting regional climate action, which kind of encompasses all of the different projects here. I'm going to turn things over to Ethan, who's going to give a little bit of an overview of, sort of central components of the environmental dashboard project, which is kind of the essence of the communication vehicle we use within this class. And then I'll say a couple things about the projects, and then we'll turn it over to the students, and I'll explain a little bit how that goes when I come back here, but I'm going to go ahead and let Ethan go.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everybody. So the goal of Environmental Dashboard and Community Hub, which is the company that provides the software for Environmental Dashboard, is to develop and implement community-centered technology that connects people and organizations with each other and the natural environment. Using interactive digital signage and web-based dashboards, our goal is to engage, educate, motivate, and empower pro-environmental and pro-community behavior. Many of you are probably familiar with Environmental Dashboard, but as a brief overview, some of the main components include a community calendar, which is a crowdsourced space for events, announcements, and volunteer opportunities. Community Voices pairs images and words from community members and organizations to promote positive action and behavior. Building Dashboard displays resource use in individual buildings as well as groups of buildings such as dorms, city buildings, etc. And then Citywide Dashboard is a conceptual model of a whole community and displays real-time resource flows and environmental conditions. And we view digital signage that you see all over the community as vital to put this content in people's faces, in the places that they work, live, and play. We have 23 screens in the city of Oberlin, and then 20 screens on Oberlin College's campus that show some of our content. We also have content on our website, the City of Oberlin Sustainability website, as well as embedded in some other organizations. And then we send out a weekly calendar newsletter to about 300 subscribers. And then this phone app All of the screens have a QR code below. You can actually scan it and control whatever screen you're nearby.
Great, and I should have mentioned to our members of the class, please do get out your computers and link to the comments on presentation so you can take notes on presentation, same link as last time. So as mentioned, we have 5 groups this semester who are focusing on 5 very exciting projects. They'll talk about their projects, but just to say a little bit more about project areas, Heather has been very instrumental in rebooting Eco Olympics, which was a big town gown event in the past. There are some new features of Eco Olympics this year, including the fact that not only are we doing a competition among dorms on campus and between Oberlin Public Schools, but we've added in the fire station, Oberlin Public Library, Prospect Community Center, Prospect Now Community Center, and the school district. And so one of our groups is focused on promoting community-wide Eco Olympics on our digital signs in town. So they'll talk a little bit about their work on that. We're also doing quite a bit of work in the schools, some of which is very closely related to Eco Olympics. We have 2 groups working on Oberlin Public Schools, focusing particularly on the new elementary school, which, as many of you know, has a very comprehensive data monitoring and display system installed in it. And there's a group that's focusing particularly on using that data in the classroom. And so they'll talk a little bit about their work on that. And then there's another group that's focused on the storytelling that goes on in the lobby display right inside that building. Related to that, we have a group focused on thinking about how data from the new sustainable infrastructure project, all these data we collect on electricity, water, and now heat flow through the buildings might be used for educational purposes on campus. And then finally, we have a group that's focused on as some of you know, the Northeast Ohio area-wide coordinating agency, NOACA, which is a crazy acronym, but that's what they're called, has been working on a regional climate action plan, collaborating with a lot of groups in the area. Some folks here have been collaborating with them on that, thinking about how we can help NOACA in partnership promote the climate action work that individuals and organizations are taking are engaging in Northeast Ohio, and we'll be using our exhibit at the Great Lakes Science Center to do that, and they'll talk a little bit about that. So in a moment, I'm going to turn this over to our first group. We're going to go through each of these 5 groups. I would ask that our guests just listen carefully, take notes if you want. We're going to go through all 5 of them, and then we'll open things up to questions and comments so that we do the 5 first, and then we do cut. So if you want to jot down some ideas, if you have particular thoughts and people, you're very welcome and encouraged to do that. But without further ado, it is my great pleasure and honor to turn things over to our first presenters who are going to talk a little bit about promoting Eco Olympics in the city of Oberlin.
You get to
Yes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Catherine Beeman. This is Sammy Singleton, and the 2 of us, along with our third partner, Dale Sink, who can't be here today, are working on the community-wide promotion of the Eco Olympics event on all environmental dashboard displays around campus and the community of Oberlin. So there's a lot of challenges with specifically reintroducing the Eco Olympics right now. This is the first Eco Olympics since 2018, which means that there's been a large decrease in community knowledge over the last 5 years. Because of the pandemic and because of other factors, we just haven't been able to keep it up. And so that year to year kind of community involvement and excitement and knowledge passing has understandably faltered. So being able to kind of jumpstart the community excitement is something that we're really excited to be able to kind of work on. We think that the widespread knowledge section of this kind of project that we're tackling is really especially beneficial when we talk about doing it across all different age groups, especially in terms of involving the elementary school, involving those public buildings and things like that. We think that creating that maximum participation is really important for maximizing the amount of knowledge, the amount of excitement, the amount of enthusiasm around the event itself. And that expansion of involvement, especially in terms of the public buildings that we're involving for the first time this year, is a really good opportunity for growth in terms of promoting Eco Olympics and also emphasizing those environmentally sustainable behaviors for years to come.
Totally. So just to expand upon that, we've set a couple goals, desired outcomes for ourselves as we move into this project. Number one is spreading community awareness using the environmental dashboard. So that means creating excitement and spreading information to those who are actually going to be involved in the event using environmental dashboard. So creating attention grabbing promotional materials that will be displayed on these digital signs. In the past, as Catherine just expanded upon, we've only involved the college and the public schools in Eco Olympics. So moving forward, we really want to take advantage of these digital signs being displayed throughout the community and interacting with community members who might not be in those college or public school spaces. So specifically this year, again, as Catherine alluded to, there's going to be a community competition between the fire station, the library, Prospect Community Center, and the public school board office. So we're hoping to target those areas specifically with environmental eco-Olympic material, promotional material that we'll create. So our second goal then is to encourage engagement in Eco-Olympics community-wide, meaning outside of those community organizations as well. We're hoping to communicate to people who live in Oberlin, maybe don't get involved with Eco-Olympics in any other way, maybe don't have kids in the school, making sure that they're hearing about this and understanding that there's this event going on for 2 weeks. Especially since we're going to be having special events in the community. We want to promote those on environmental dashboard as well, and allow other people to know about them, to get involved in that. And then finally, our third final goal is to foster positive environmental behaviors and to inform all people in the community, both those involved in Eco Olympics and those not as personally involved, that there are different ways that they can reduce their environmental impact. So by suggesting small, easily doable activities, and allowing people to rethink their everyday behaviors, we're going to create promotional materials that will also be displayed on environmental dashboard in this positive and encouraging way to make people rethink their carbon footprint, and also emphasize the theme of Eco Olympics this year, which is think global, invest local.
Absolutely. So our approach to kind of tackling these opportunities is primarily through the community voices section of environmental dashboard. There's an example up here, essentially getting a quote from someone in the community, taking a photo of someone in the community, combining these to make a really visually appealing kind of either call to action or demonstration of diversity, something along those lines. And we think that could be really, really beneficial for emphasizing the importance of Eco Olympics, as well as emphasizing people's excitement about it, either in the past or in the future as we restart the event. We think emphasizing diversity especially can be really important to gain insight into the community, especially because that involves us talking to diverse members of the community and getting a diverse range of perspectives on ecologically sensitive behaviors or just the community in general. We also think the accessibility of the ED display is really beneficial here because there's so many screens, as Ethan was discussing. Being able to spread that knowledge really far, and especially in public areas, is really beneficial in order to get this message out. And finally, we think that this is really beneficial for having long-term outcomes for Eco Olympics. Obviously, we want people to decrease their environmental impact in the 2 weeks of the actual event, but we want these behaviors, as Sammy said, to go on beyond that. We want those little things to be still kind of in the back of their minds as they move forward and think more about the environment and about their impact. So keeping those positive thoughts about Eco Olympics and about the environment, I think, are really essential, and emphasizing that continued work towards improving your carbon footprint, things along those lines.
Yeah, totally. So we see this as a way to bring the community together as a whole, but also as a way that the community can feel closer to their environment and see the way that they're impacting the environment. So Eco Olympics as a whole, we see having a really great potential to spread awareness about these ideas and really promote, create, and foster environmentally positive activities. We as a group hope to be able to take part in this by spreading community awareness about the ongoing event, encourage engagement in it, whether that's in a community organization or outside of that, and also eventually foster pro-environmental behavior. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Number 2, go ahead. What's done?
Okay. Hello, everyone. Today, Well, first, I'm Peyton, Bryn, and Martina, and we will be presenting our plan for our data visualization mini lessons for K through 5 students in Oberlin Elementary School. Okay, for the first time in Oberlin Elementary School, students will be able to see real-time electricity use in their schools separated out by different end uses, such as plug load versus light load, different locations such as cafeteria versus media center, or differentiated by grade level, and then the different types of appliances such as electricity use in the hand dryers that they use in the bathroom. Because the system is only now just being completed, we have not yet been able to integrate the use of data visualization and analysis from the new system into classroom learning. The environmental dashboard provides us with the opportunity to integrate sustainable habits into the lives of children at Oberlin Elementary. Using data visualization mini lessons, K through 5 students will be able to understand how their resource use is reflected onto the data that is displayed on the environmental dashboard. Based on the timing of when these lessons will be executed within the classroom, the lessons will be used to promote Eco-Olympics to guide students to use the environmental dashboard as a tool to win.
Awesome. So we have a few desired outcomes for our project, but we do have a very first initial outcome that we have to establish first. So our most immediate outcome is for students and teachers to gain competency of resource use and real-time data. They should be able to interpret this building data on resource consumption and connect it to behavioral and managerial choices. And in order to achieve this, it will also be important that they form connections with the dashboard, empathetic characters, Flash and Wally, who serve as indicators on the significance of resource flows. And through their increased data and graph literacy, as well as their improved connections with Flash and Wally, we hope that they can understand how their behaviors can actually be altered to affect Eco-Olympics outcomes. And ultimately, we hope to increase students' environmental literacy, systems thinking, and self-efficacy in tackling environmental issues, especially at the local level. Hopefully, these lesson plans will promote sustainable habits within the students that they will continue to execute throughout the rest of their life.
And finally, our approach for this project has 3 main steps. The first of them was coordinating with our community partners. In this case, it was the elementary school, the STEAM teacher. In case you didn't know, STEAM stands for science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. So we met with her just to understand better her timeline, when it was most appropriate for us to go into the classrooms, and also to understand better what age-appropriate content would look like. So that's when we decided that we wanted to do these lessons about a week before Eco-Olympics, and kind of frame it as a way and as a tool to win Eco-Olympics. Then our second step has been brainstorming and designing the lessons. So we have been reviewing different archives from the environmental dashboard on previous lessons from past years, and also designing some data display to see what we can use in the classroom. And then our third step will be just meet with Brandy, the STEAM teacher again, to get some feedback on the content that we have designed, and then go into the classrooms and give these 30-minute lessons to the kids. And for this, we'll have some support from a group of high school students that have volunteered to help us. And we are really excited to continue developing this project and see how we can promote resource conservation through education in the classroom, and helping and using this tool, the environmental dashboard, taking advantage of its technology to achieve this goal. So yeah, thank you. You go first.
I'll go first. That's great. I will go first.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Marissa, and I, along with Rhea and Hillel, will be presenting our project, which is integrating data visualization of resource consumption with storytelling for an interactive kiosk display in Oberlin Elementary School. So we collaborating with teachers and students in the school to develop 3 interactive stories about resource use. There's going to be energy production, energy use, and water use. And we will utilize real-time data analytics from the new school building, which has been wired with a sophisticated data metering system. And we hope that these stories with real-time data visualizations will help students connect their behavior and actions to resource use. So one of the big challenges is that these stories were written before the data system was complete because it was written by a previous iteration of this class and the building just wasn't complete yet. We didn't know it was going to be metered. So as you can see, this is an example of just one of the blank slides. We just don't really know what's going to go up there right now. That means that we have the capability to get a lot of feedback and really tailor it for the new school, which is very exciting. So here's a summary of the different types of data that we have access to. And what's really cool about it is the way that they can break down. So for example, with the energy use, you can separate it by overhead lights versus plug-in lights or by grades. And with water use, you can break it down by, is it being used by the kitchens or the bathrooms, that kind of thing. And so we hope that this will help students really be able to connect their own behaviors. So for example, with this domestic hot water use, whole building water use, and dishwasher use, we hope that students will see this and see, oh, there's a really big spike when we have lunch. Our behavior is connected to that water use. And these visuals are all the same ones that are currently being used by the environmental dashboards, the same kind of graphs. So they're somewhat similar, but it's also introducing students to learning how to read graphs, how to interpret this kind of data.
So in terms of our desired outcomes, we're aiming for a specific impact on the people within the elementary school, but then hoping that that's going to have like a ripple effect on the Oberlin community as a whole. To begin, we hope that through these data visualizations, we'll increase Oberlin students' data literacy, which should help supplement the formal learning that they're doing in classes. And we plan to work with teachers and curriculum makers and establish good communication with them to allow for well-tailored visualizations, which is one of our primary goals. And then beyond just the relevance to students' classroom education, making lessons accessible and interesting in general is crucial to making an impact, and not just on the students. We hope to have data visualizations that are accessible to teachers, parents, and anyone else who comes through the school. By connecting empathetic characters and animated storylines about the environment to raw data and the elementary school's own resource use, we also aim to aid students in developing an emotional attachment to the environment. Following this model on the screen, that will help us build bridges between these 3 concepts in the minds of students: us as humans, the space we have to make choices, and the ecological impacts of these choices. Taking advantage of the unique metering, we can offer hyperspecific data that allows for a clear tie between the choices and impact, fostering a strong sense of agency in the environment from a young age. And then following that train of logic, we hope that a good understanding of the data on the part of students and school employees will help reduce water and electricity use in the school. An understanding of how water and electricity use impacts the environment could also translate out of the school and into students' home lives and futures as well, which is another desired outcome that would benefit Oberlin as a whole.
We plan to accomplish our goals by familiarizing ourselves with the available data, creating iterations of the data visualizations, and meeting with the ES mini lessons group, the group that went right before us, and teachers around the beginning of April to get a hold on how we can best communicate and engage students with our information. As was mentioned, the school has been completely wired, more even than our initial plan. And with this massive data, we have the opportunity to integrate much more information into the slides than we first thought possible. Our first hurdle with this data is to make sure that our data can be understandable and accessible and engaging to the students as well as other visitors that come to the school. And we can do that with looking at usage by grades, total building usage, using different types of graphs like heat maps or portfolio drift maps or even line graphs, and looking at the data over different time scales, like over the course of a single day, or looking at weeks compared to each other. We have currently had a formal assignment to kickstart us learning how to use Building OS, the data software, but we currently have but we have each taken time by ourselves to familiarize ourselves with that information. And so with this data and our ability to use it effectively, our next step is to create and recreate different data visualizations. First, by fulfilling the data visualizations in the existing water, electricity, and solar power stories. Then with the feedback of our peers, teachers, and supervisors, we will edit and better and eventually finalize our visualizations and fully integrate them with the stories already in use in the ED. The goal of the feedback is not just to reemphasize the benefits of visualizations and to figure out the best presentation of those points, but to learn if these are still the best ways that we can be presenting this information to meet our goal of educating the student population. Our goal is not just to change students' behaviors, though that is certainly an outcome we hope for, but to educate students on the environment as well as teaching them data literacy. With our work, students as well as other stakeholders will be able to understand energy and water use systems, how their actions interact with the broader system, and why they're acting in a green way is beneficial. That is our project on integrating data visualizations. Thank you all so much for your time and consideration.
Great, hello. My name is Francis Wagaman. This is Stephanie Macedo and Zoe Nanlin. And today we're going to present our proposal for an interactive kiosk display set in the center of Oberlin College's campus. This kiosk will track Oberlin College's progress toward its 2025 goal, carbon neutrality, as well as educate, motivate, and empower students to mind their resource consumption.
So a lot of the information that will be included in this kiosk will be about the Sustainable Infrastructure Project, or the SIP. So that we can fill the gaps in knowledge about the project that exist within Oberlin's student population and communicate how the SIP is improving Oberlin's infrastructure and how it will achieve the college's goal of carbon neutrality by 2025. The kiosk would improve or would provide comprehensive information about how the SIP has converted 440 buildings across Oberlin's campus to geothermal heating and cooling by utilizing underground storage wells. This information is really important to disseminate to students because it affects students living in working spaces, and it will save around 5 million gallons of water and around $1 million annually. Another opportunity that we have is with this kiosk is to incorporate the existing environmental dashboard data and programming that part of this. Environmental dashboard utilizes metering systems throughout Oberlin's campus and city to display data about heat, water, and electricity use. And because the environmental dashboard already has so much existing data about building resource use on campus, this is a really great opportunity to disseminate that information to a wider audience because Wilder Bowl is in such a central location. So this opportunity is also great to utilize environmental dashboards, establish monitoring infrastructure to allow students to interact with this data, with these data visualizations from environmental dashboard that will create and corresponding to building resource in order to make informed decisions, in order to allow students to make informed decisions about their own resource and energy consumption by learning more about where energy on campus comes from and how it's utilized in specific buildings.
For the desired outcomes, our project hopes to raise awareness, not just for students, but also for members of the community about resource consumption and also sources of energy. It just means that we want individuals to understand where their energy is made and the process it takes to reach the consumer. We hope that this would bridge the gap between the producer and the consumer, and that it would motivate individuals to conserve their energy for reasons that aren't monetary in nature. We also hope that would motivate personal and community change, preferably starting at the individual, perhaps by turning off the faucet and brushing teeth, but eventually reaching the community level And this can be through the use of exposure to emotive characters on the kiosk, and they could develop like an emotional attachment to resource consumption. And their final desired outcome is to set a technological precedent for other institutions that are exploring sustainability. And this could hopefully increase global efforts to mitigate climate change.
Great. So to accomplish all these goals, it's important for us to understand and recognize that this is a long-term project. In the scope of this semester, we have three main tasks that we hope to accomplish: content research, content development, and installation research, with hopes to end the semester with a surplus of quality content for the kiosk, as well as a cost and time estimate for its installation. The most important part of the kiosk, of course, is its content. Last year, students taking this class were able to begin work on kiosk content in the form of data stories and data visualizations. There is still much to be done in the way of incorporating SIP information into these stories, as well as many opportunities for improvement on a psychological front with regards to visuals. We will spend a quarter of our time researching how to make attention-grabbing, memory-forming, persuasive data visualizations and stories using methods highlighted in Robert B. Cialdini's book, Influence. After the research has been completed and we have a firm grasp on what we're doing, we will begin creating visuals, experimenting with different ways to present data in an effective way. This will take about half of our time. Finally, it's important to know just about how much this will cost. And so we will work with John Peterson and the environmental dashboard to look into how much it costed to install each of the TV displays that the environmental dashboard uses. And we'll try to sort of estimate how that looks in a kiosk format. And we will also research the amount of time it could take to install this kiosk, which is especially important considering that Oberlin's carbon neutrality goal is in 2025. And we'll have to think also about how this kiosk could serve a purpose post 2025. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to furthering our progress on this project.
Find it out.
Good afternoon. I'm Ophelia Jackson with Golden Coulter and Evie Ward. And we're working with NOACA to develop community voices content for their climate action plan. In this presentation, we'll be talking about our specific goals and outcomes that we're looking to achieve, the process, and the challenges and opportunities we see as exigencies for this work. Yeah, so for several years, NOACA has focused on transportation in the Northeast Ohio area. However, they now are working to develop a community action and climate action plan. And we in turn are working to develop community voices content to promote and communicate this plan at the Science Center, Great Lakes Science Center environmental dashboard display. And this content is important because we see some of the greatest opportunities to communicate these messages in the power of community members to serve as internal messengers to communicate these messages most effectively. We see the power of social norms to shape individual behavior and the role of the Great Lakes Science Center as a hub of community activity. By amplifying community members' voices, celebrating existing positive beliefs and behaviors that are already going on and establishing them as central to community values and identity, we can foster the sense of collective self-efficacy and investment that's critical for achieving NOACA's climate action goals.
Right, so we have a couple of desired outcomes and goals for this project. First, we're hoping to generate some compelling and engaging content for the Great Lakes Science Center exhibits through interviews with community members. And we have an example up here of something that our slides might look like. This is from the environmental dashboard online. And then we're also hoping to generate content that celebrates positive climate thought and action. And then through that content, we're hoping to inspire not only climate action, but also personal investment in the environment in the Northeast regional Ohio population. And then the goal through that is that this content will reinforce existing norms regarding like small scale actions that anyone can take. And then hopefully that will help community members understand how their everyday patterns can impact resource consumption and then also environmental impacts. But ultimately, our goal is to create content that will help Northeast Ohioans feel empowered and motivated by their fellow community members and inspire them to partake in climate action.
Our approach is straightforward. We will learn about Northeast Ohio communities through regional player interviews. First, drafting interview questions together, and then doing 2 interviews each independently. As interviews are completed, we will transfer transcript and visual contents onto Community Voices slides, each of us contributing 10 slides of photos and quotations for 30 slides total. After all the content is transferred, we will meet to review the whole presentation and curate it according to persuasion and social marketing principles. Our final presentation, we presented to public audiences through the Great Lakes Natural Science Center's environmental dashboard, where community members are empowered to reduce their community's resource consumption and environmental impacts. Thank you for your consideration.
So we'll go ahead and maybe first open things up to questions from our guests. Yeah, if you guys have any questions for any of our presenters, you're welcome to ask them now.
I'll ask a question. I'm gonna start with the last group, this most on my mind. So I've been working with NOACA on this climate action planning, and it has been a challenge to say the least. And one of the challenges is that it is a 5-county area, and 2 of the counties, Lorain, our county, and Medina, are maybe more rural than the others, and they see themselves that way. And there's been some contention recently, those 2 counties in particular have pulled out a little bit, saying, you no longer are speaking to us. You're not hearing our rural people's voices. So that's my question. How can this work help us reach and support more rural people in those 2 counties? I mean, and all the counties have some rural people, but other than, you know, the urban folks who I feel like we're touching, if you have any thoughts on that, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I know that NOACA has been historically in relationship with those communities because of the transportation. Through their focus on transportation, you know, addressing the needs of communities that exist in circumstances that transportation is more difficult than it would be in a large urban area, or where those connections are easier to access or services are easier to access. In one of our earlier presentations, we talked about you just have to have a car, personal vehicle access in so many ways. So I say that to say my hope would be that their relationship existing would facilitate that. But it seems like that maybe hasn't been as much the case. But we talk about kind of reframing so much of environmental communication
in terms of not being in line, aligned with the priorities that people already have. And not limiting it to this idea of like, oh, love nature. But appealing to, if that's not already the case, but appealing to the priorities that people already recognize as important to them. And so I think with community voices, when we are able to capture statements that establish the connections between the work that we're doing and the things that people already want to see or the changes that they hope for. And the way that these are relevant to them and their families, and you know, whatever their hopes and goals are. Like establishing those connections and then having it attributed to somebody who seems similar and who seems trustworthy. And I think that's when we talk about internal messengers, right? Like if somebody's seeing somebody who looks like them, looks like they're worried about maybe the same kind of things and not this kind of idealistic image. But thinking about like what does diversity, representing diversity look like? And that's, you know, both rural and urban as well as across demographics. So making sure that those people are truly being represented, and seeing themselves represented. Yeah, I think that's important. Are all things we think about with community voices and being kind of the unique power of that medium. I guess I just want to ask really quickly what you have experienced as some of the challenges.
So right now, the two counties and the representatives who serve on the NOACA board have kind of stepped away because they feel like they're not being represented in the climate action planning. And they say that their rural people are not being represented. So that's a challenge we're currently facing.
Yeah, go, other questions? You look like-
I have a totally different question then.
Go for it.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, that's okay.
All right, so just for the first group, I had two questions, comments. So the first question I have, so you talked about digital signs for the dashboard. So you're gonna create new community voices content, which I understand. Are you also gonna create like digital posts or signs that will go up on the college only? Because my understanding is that's separate than the community voices, and I think there's some real opportunity there to create some slides. I know, Josh, you have staff that can help train you if you haven't already talked about that on messaging that would be just for the college. So just a thought, that was one question. Second question I had is, you know, when you're talking about behavior change in the community, I love that. It got me thinking, like, is there any way that we can have some sort of place where if you're a community member and you're in IGA and you see the dashboard and it's like, oh, Eco Olympics is going on, is there a place to like share ideas or tips on like what you could be doing in your own life to reduce some of these? Has that ever existed before with Eco Olympics, even on campus?
Only in the form of community voices content where people are sharing, not in a sort of direct sense that you're talking
Yeah,
about,
and
not in the sort of immediacy that you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how that would work, but just came to mind, so.
I do feel like it would be totally possible to develop like, even just like 5 to 10 slides that are just like eco tips, like here's a little visual and here's that's one little thing you can do in your day. I feel like that is totally possible. I don't know if that necessarily falls under this project. I guess I can kind of be up to Professor Peterson, but I do think that's a possibility.
I think I like the idea of having a sort of QR code and people can go in and be like, oh, this is what I do to save energy. And then turning that into a sort of like community voices producer, I think could be really helpful.
Yeah.
As far as like producing stuff for the college, I think like our project is right now, especially like really focused on like connecting the community to stuff that the college is already doing. But I mean, like, I'm not closed off to the idea.
I just have a comment for this group. I guess it's kind of a question. This year, I think is the first year that we're setting a community-wide usage reduction goal of 10,000? Yeah.
10,000 kilowatt hours.
So I think even if you are a person who would never step foot in any of the public buildings that are participating, like you never go to the library, you don't walk in the fire station, whatever, I think it's still important to emphasize that like your action in your own home is still participating in the community reduction goal. Because I think that might be a way to like make people in the community more connected, because they're like, okay, during these 2 weeks, I can actually help out with this whole community goal at home. And it's not just like, in a sense, it's like their own internal competition with themselves. So I think maybe that's something you guys could work on advertising, the fact that like as a community, we're trying to reduce, just to kind of like bring those ties together.
I have a question actually for a number of groups. I noticed, I'm guessing you talked about this in class, because I noticed a framework where a lot of your projects talk about both raising awareness, but also influencing behavior, which are really, they're different forms of communication are more or less effective for each of those kinds of communicating. I'm curious, just for all of your projects, how are you thinking about those differently and the kinds of content you would create differently for those two distinct goals of raising awareness versus changing behaviors or reinforcing behaviors?
I'm not a community voices group, but for those that are involved in community voices on a more strong level than my group, I think that's our main kind of way in to get people to change their behavior. Because if you set a social norm, like, oh, this person that I happen to see on the way to class does this thing, or this person that I've seen in the community does this thing, and they see their face on the screen, they walk by, I mean, like, that's gonna change potentially how they think about a certain behavior. And I think that's like the main method that most groups that are trying to enact change use.
Go.
For our group, I think for like with the kids, our biggest thing is making them realize that like their behavior and their usage is like connected to the resource use. So it's not just like looking at the graph, being like, that's a graph with water. Like, oh, that's me like flushing the toilet right there, that little spike, like that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's like where our connection with those two different ones is.
It's a very good question.
I have one more thing. Sorry. But there's also, you might have seen the squirrel and the fish on the screen. They like get really depressed when usage is high, and they get really happy when usage is low. So I mean, take with that what you will, but it does have an effect on kids and it makes them care. And so that's like definitely something for the elementary schools and even the greater community members, like just having that kind of visual cue. It's like, oh no, we gotta use less, you know, stuff like that.
I think the important thing you're getting at, though, very important distinction is knowledge and behavior are different things. And clearly, we're trying to address both of those in that question about what's your model. In some ways, you're asking, what is your model of change here? And I think it's the thing to think about, and Bryn wants to respond.
I mean, my group, like, especially is working with kids as well, and I think that, like, having kids as a target audience and, like, being someone that's younger, like yourself, it can feel really disempowering to grow up in a world where, like, climate change is so, like, urgent. But by giving them the tools to realize, like, they can actually change their behaviors to help, like, I really view our project as being, like, a source of empowerment and, like, about action, less than about, like, awareness. Because all the kids at this point, like, they walk in through the school and they're like, oh, there's a dashboard. But, like, until they can attribute that to, like, a choice they can make, I feel like they won't value it the same level too.
I would just encourage all of you to think about more targeted goals for this thing. So when you say awareness, what does that actually mean? Does it mean a certain number of people are aware literally that, say, Eco Olympics is happening? And is that different than the behavior change piece? And is that just about empowering people to understand that it's possible, or having a certain number of kids participate in that, or see their own empowerment, right? So I think it's important to have both of those goals because they're different. And to understand what you mean by those, I think it's great that you have them individually separate as objectives, but it would be even more powerful to be able to understand what you would measure as success for each of those things separately, so that it's clear why they're not one thing, why it's not just one or the other.
I guess I'll just say, I think there are several different models operating here that are really important in the issue you're raising. And one is knowledge does not necessarily lead to action. It just sort of starting with that is sort of like, we understand knowledge does not lead to action. The flip side is we're all about education at Oberlin College, in the schools, we're about education. So the question really is how you marry like decisions which really are much more driven by social norms and emotions with the deep kind of knowledge that one has to have long-term in order to make the right decisions, you know? And maybe we're not doing maybe your point at some level is you need to articulate that connection better than you're doing right now. Because I see all the connections in their projects, but maybe as communicators, we're not effectively articulating the model that connects, okay, we know people are affected by social norms and they're affected by emotions. And we know at the end of the day, people need to understand how a system works in order to know what the heck to do to make a difference. You know, how do you effectively marry those and how do you communicate the marriage of those different models of change? We're gonna get a chance to comment after these guys leave. We only booked them for an hour, so I wanna make sure we give them a chance to do a little bit of a dump on anything they wanna give us in terms of feedback on presentation. So we could go one by one or, you know, but just, we're gonna run down on time otherwise. So do any of you wanna start? It looks like Linda
Sure,
does wanna start. Okay, just do a rundown of sort of feedback.
Okay, so group one, I think you guys did a good job of engaging the audience, eye contact, speaking directly to us. I thought that was really great. The one challenge that I found were the photos focused, to me, I felt like those photos were focused on the big parade. And I'm one of those people that this Eco Olympics will be the first one I've ever participated in, and I've heard about it, but I've never understood it that well. So I was hoping for some photos that would help me understand it more. I mean, I liked the big parade and I saw that it said Eco Olympics and those were some people involved in, but I'm not exactly sure what those photos would be, but that's just one thing I was thinking. And then I love that the goals of your worker to sort of think about beyond the contest, like, because obviously the contest is fun, but it doesn't matter if it doesn't change behavior. So thinking about that, and so you stated that, but I guess I'd want to know more about what that looks like and how you're planning to achieve that goal. Group number two, I thought the outcomes were very thought out and ambitious. Again, how do you make those lessons last beyond contests? So similar thought there. Group number three, my one thing was, I don't really know what a kiosk is. That's a me problem, I realize, but I guess I wanted to understand how it's different than the dashboards. And I think it means interaction, but I would want a bigger introduction there about this kiosk and what it's for, what it looks like. I felt like you could work a little harder on eye contact, and I know there's plenty of times when you want to look at your notes, and I don't think that's always bad, but I think you always need to look up from them and just check in with your people and look around. So I'm gonna zip through. And group number four, I think it's really important to introduce everyone in your group. And really, you know, it makes it more personal and we connect with you better. So don't just introduce the first person, but really important, all of you. I want to know who you are. And I'm being critical. There's, you know, all of the good things I'm not saying just for time's sake. And speak a little slower. So I really like that you're connecting to the 2025 goal of the college, because the college has stated this goal for a long time. And it's like, wow, that's 2 years away, folks, so let's be real. And so I like that this is what you're trying to do, is be like, hey, you said this, now here, we're gonna work on this, and we're gonna show you how we're gonna do it. And then last group, I think good overall intro. Yeah, and some of this I already said is that I just have this sort of nagging question about including rural people. And this antagonism went so far as some of the folks saying, why are we not including the Amish? Like, I mean, yeah, okay, but farmers, obviously climate change affects farmers. So let's hear from them, let's see them, let's, it's a hard one. And I'd be happy to help them in any way, but yeah,
We'll take you up on that.
okay. So that's what I got. But for a first go round for all of you, really great. I think they're all really interesting, cool topics, and important work.
All right, Josh, we'll go you next.
Yeah, I'll talk more generally. I have a lot of specific notes that I took. But I thought all the groups were great. What I really appreciate is actually the breadth of the projects and seeing how all these different pieces kind of connect together. In terms of feedback, I think for me, if I was to sit through these further along in the development, the things I would be looking for and interested in is kind of that next level of connection and detail, right? So there were a lot of places where I was like, either because I haven't sat in your class and I don't know the assumptions, or because they're not yet baked in, they're still not figured out. I would want to see that kind of direct line that explains, I'm like, so, okay, there's a group that talks specifically about Cialdini's work. I want to see all of those principles of influence and how those translate into the content, ideas for each of those and how you're going to integrate them. Or here's the ones we're going to focus on and here's the ones we're not going to focus on. So I think for me, this is great as a first piece. Let's dig into that next step. For the kiosk, I want to know, like, where on campus? And is it about the question of so a central location on campus could be great for awareness and visibility if it's a place people are walking by. But if it's a place you expect people to stop and pay attention and interact, that's a different central place on campus. So what's the theory behind that? Where are the possible locations? That kind of stuff. So yeah, great work.
That's great.
Yeah, I'll just add my 2 cents here. Just so overall comments, yeah, I agree. I think everyone did a really great job. I'm really excited about these projects because these are really complex problems that you're looking to solve. And I like the way you approached it with, your goals and your outcomes. And I guess my follow-up question, kind of where Josh is going, it's like, these are really great outcomes, but how are you going to get there? How are you going to measure that you got there? So I don't know if that's part of the class, but there's like an output and an outcome. Outputs are easy to measure, outcomes are not. So just thinking about that a little bit more. What does success look like with these projects besides you turn it in? I guess I would just say too, and this comes with practice, but in general, you don't want to just read from a note card when you're giving a presentation. You want to have like notes for yourself, but then not read full sentences. So that's just like something that comes with practice. And but I'm really impressed. These are really exciting projects, and I hope I get invited back to see the final result.
Oh, you definitely will. All right, well, I'm cognizant we're like 1 minute over for you guys, so thank you guys so much for coming. Really, really enormously valuable to have you guys willing to come at this first shot. So really deep appreciation to you for that. So thanks, guys.
Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.